So I'm chilling at this wonderful bar named Elixir in Da Lat, Vietnam, which is just packed with groovy little places. I don't know how else to say it, but today I'm going to run down a kind of a serious video about my dad and his health journey. And he's in Chiang Mai, Thailand right now, and he doesn't have the greatest health history. So I thought some people would maybe want to hear that story. It's very inspiring. I hope it inspires you as much as it does me. So without further ado, we'll get started. Hey guys, it's today me back at Elixir the day after the yesterday me recorded the remainder of this video because I left my wallet here. And that's okay because today me needs to cover the arse of yesterday me. A few things before we get started. Number one, this video may contain themes and language, that may be deemed inappropriate for youngsters. So we are talking about cannabis and we're talking about prescription drug use and we're talking about something emotional, and sometimes I can get caught up in a story and let a few words fly. It's not all the way through the video. Most of the time I keep it pretty buttoned up. So, and number two, you'll notice right off if you're from the States, this is a very American story. So either you or somebody you know has gone through something like my dad's gone through, and he found relief in cannabis, and it's why he's in Thailand right now. He's in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and that area has been voted the best healthcare system in Southeast Asia. And so there's nothing that you need done that you can't get done in Chiang Mai. It's a very good location if you're worried about that. If you're risk averse, like a lot of people that I know, you're never going to pull the trigger on this, right? So you either have to decide to do it or you decide you're not doing it. And that's how my dad decided to do it. And you'll hear more about that in the video. I've time-stamped the video so you can skip ahead to your favorite parts if you don't want to hear my dad's entire amazing story. And don't forget, a like goes a really long way. Anyway, enjoy the video and participate. I was supposed to move to Thailand with my dad a couple of years ago, but it became clear that his health decline was becoming more evident and we really needed to be safe rather than sorry. My dad has a chronic history of health problems dating back 25 or 30 years. He underwent some experimental interferon treatments, like chemo, for stage 4 melanoma. And so he was part of the trials of 400 people. My dad was a big guy. He was 6'5", or what is that, maybe 194 centimeters, something like that. And robust and very healthy. So in this group of 400 people, he got the highest dose. Of the top 10 doses or so, all of them are dead now except for him. So the dosing was too high. They would never give that to somebody today. But he really wanted his life to count for something other than just getting well. So this had a good chance of killing the cancer and had a lot of unknowns as far as side effects. But he went through it anyway, and knowing him, I know that it made him proud to feel like he was doing something good for humanity. Fast forward a few years later, he's in absolute debilitating pain. Those treatments, they burned the ends of his nerves, and he has ever since had a severe case of neuropathy. Nerve cells don't heal like other cells in the body can. And so not only was he in constant extreme pain, but the nervous system also controls peripheral nerves, which is, has to do with anxiety and stress and the way that physical pain can interact and cause you emotional distress, severe emotional distress. And that's what he was going through, both of those things as a result of the treatment. He's very thankful that they did what they could to, keep him alive, and that his dosage is something that they aren't repeating in part because of him and that group of test subjects, just what somebody can survive, and then not only that, what they can live with afterward. So if you're American, you kind of know what comes next. He began to be prescribed various pain medications to help take the edge off. And if one didn't work, he would move to another, or if it had this side effect, he would move to another. So constantly cycling through various pain medication and dosage increases. And that was just the beginning. He had all sorts of debilitating issues. He was having vertigo issues where he couldn't keep his balance. He would fall over. He had digestive problems. He was on an oxygen tank. He was in a hospital bed at home. He had a wheelchair and a walker. You know, you keep adding medications to fix this issue and then this issue and then this issue. And over the course of 2 to 3 years, he went from relatively healthy to almost bedridden and on a cocktail of 12 different pharmaceutical medications, including but not limited to some of the taking care of some of those issues caused by the neuropathy, anti-anxiety meds, antidepressant medications, which come with their own Trojan horse, right? The original treatments, I think, were in 1998, and by 2012, 2013, my dad was completely depleted. He mentioned the oxygen tank, the hospital bed, disoriented. He lived in my hometown, my house that I grew up in, and he would leave and he would get lost and couldn't make it back to his own home. And his wife, my stepmom's a wonderful woman and was taking care of him, and she had done about all she could do at that time. And so she had been caretaker for quite a while, and she could no longer handle him in a way without it becoming something else other than, I would say, husband and wife. And so my dad had made, and she had made the decision, when things got to a certain point, that he wouldn't bring her through those last stages, and she didn't deserve that. And so they separated in 2012 or 2013, I believe. She's a very good woman and a very good family, and she's they're very close to this day, and so I'm thankful for that. So after they separated, he tried to live on his own for a few months, and that was not successful. And we kind of all knew it wouldn't be, but it was something that he really wanted to try, and but it wasn't working out, and so that's where I come in. And so I drove. It's about 12 hours, 10 or 12 hours, from where I was living in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, to my home in Bentonville, Arkansas. And so I went and picked him up in a U-Haul truck and packed up his place. Boy, I should not have done that. That was very bad. I didn't get any help, and I really should have, because uh, I finally packed up, cleaned up. We got everything in the U-Haul truck to leave, and as soon as I sat in the truck, I rolled the window down and threw up. So in this wonderful bar, they have brought me with my margarita a bunch of fruit, which is amazing, and then they just brought me around a shot. So I'm going to take that. Very nice. Ooh, that's very nice. Like key lime. The city I was living in was not a good look for someone who wanders off and gets lost. So I moved to from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, about an hour away, to Columbia, Tennessee, where I had lived before, and it's much slower pace. And I thought it would be a little less trouble for him to get into. So I picked out a home purposefully that had a nice big yard. We put a bird feeder out. I wanted to make the home a place that he enjoyed so much that he wouldn't maybe want to wander off and get lost, and put him just far enough from where everything is that I thought it would deter him from wandering off because there wasn't anything around. But that was not the case. 3 days after we moved to Columbia, I came home from school. I was at university at the city that I lived in and had a job as a bar manager there. Um, but I came home one afternoon, and there was a car in our driveway, and Dad was getting out of the car. Some stranger had picked him up. Apparently, my dad was in distress, and so they found his way home. And again, 3 days. So I began to see kind of the writing on the wall that I was going to be that de facto caretaker, that was going to be me. And so I was going to try to piece together my life and finish my semester of my school, and that didn't happen either. So this wasn't going well, and honestly we thought this is the end. So I was in the middle of a degree for energy technology, again an hour away, and I was working on a tight deadline, a national competition, and I had one day left to finish my project. I was in the middle of that, and well, let's just say the timing couldn't have been any worse at that time from a selfish standpoint. My dad calls and he's terribly distraught and crying and disoriented, and he needs me to come home. And it's, you can tell it's breaking his heart that he needs me to come home because he knows what I'm doing and what I'm in the middle of. But my God, if you can't handle it, you can't handle it. Who else was he going to call, right? So the drive home was hard. That was the realization that I'm not going to be able to run this clock out. And I'm thinking selfishly, but really it was about, the future, making money, getting the degree, getting the job, and all of that. And while my concern I had for him was real, on the way home, all I could think was, how am I going to prepare for this new life that I have, which isn't going to be able to hold a job or finish a degree and is going to become a full-time caretaker. There's financial implications and all sorts of implications other than just, the failing health of my father. When I arrived home, he was still a wreck, an absolute wreck. Now, I had talked to Dad several times and kind of urged him that, and in these end of life stages, we might want to turn to cannabis to help ease the suffering and make it just to where those final days, months, they don't suck so bad. I had tried cannabis before for insomnia, and then it turned into recreational use, and then it turned into a sport, then an Olympic sport, and then I was doing way too much by the time I was halfway through living in Portland, and yeah, so calmed it way down since then. So any medicine can be taken too far. That's all I'll say about it. But I had mentioned cannabis, and he was very resistant. My dad had never smoked, drank. I had never heard him, even to this day, say a curse word. And so he's not much like his son, I can tell you that. But he was very resistant because his parents had taught him that. And as a health teacher, he taught the ills of marijuana use to his students uh, ad nauseum for years and years and years. He's since said that he actually regrets that he did that. But so we had talked about cannabis for these end of life scenarios, and I also told him whenever he came to live with me, I said, you're not coming here to die. You're coming here to live, and we're going to try some different things. He was overweight, so I changed his diet. We tried to get on organic foods and anti-inflammatory type of foods so that we can not help the nerves be inflamed. We can do our best to kind of subdue that. And some of those things had some moderate returns, but there was still a quality of life issue that we were dealing with big time here. And so the diet and the supplements and the vitamins, they helped, but this was a very bleak situation here. This was an existential moment of, what are we going to do now? What are we going to do? He felt like he was ruining my life, and as far as the path that I had chose, that was an accurate statement, right? So I don't mean to be, I'm a dick about it, because I'm totally aware that I don't care about any of that now. I've grown quite a bit and needed to be honest. I mentioned to him, I said, I really think it's time that you try to smoke some weed. And he was still crying, and he said, yeah, I think you're right. So at the time, all I had was a pipe. I didn't have anything to roll up, so I packed it up with some stuff. And keep in mind now, at that time, weed was very illegal in Tennessee and most of America, maybe medical use in a couple of states. No real recreational use anywhere around, and especially not in Tennessee. But as in most places, if you know a guy or you have a guy, you can find it, you can get it. And so I had it because at that point I was a regular smoker. I had to start the pipe, and I got it lit and then handed it to him. And so he took it, and he did not know what he was doing at all. And so we had to keep going back and forth. And so I'm constantly starting it, and I'm constantly giving it to him because I think, he's getting something here. He's getting something. So we're working through it back and forth. And I mean, we're doing this for 15 or 20 minutes, and I'm hammered. I'm fucking stoned out of my mind at that point, just getting it started and handing to him. And so he's doing it, and then I'm talking, I'm telling a story. Things have subdued with him a little bit, where the deep, dark place that he was in when he called me, it wasn't so deep and dark anymore. And so I was trying to keep his mind off of it and telling a story just like I'm doing right now. And he interrupted me. He said, Matt, that's my real name. So he said, Matt, he said, I can't feel my fingers. And I said, oh, okay, that's great. So I think something's working. And he said, no, you don't understand. It's it's never been this way before. I've never been able to take care of the pain like that. And in my feet too. And I said, great, here you go. And so he took it back. We finally started getting, he was smoking, he was laughing, he was telling stories, he was coherent, and he was pain free. And so we did this for about 45 minutes or an hour. And it was the best conversation I'd had with him in years. I had hopes that it would help a little bit with the pain. I had never used it for pain at all, and finding information on cannabis that was any type of credible was hard to do at the time. And I just really wanted it for quality of life, like I said, so that these end days don't suck quite so bad, because I knew weed is good for that. So he was just much more coherent than usual and with it. And so I had an idea. I had been studying this cocktail of drugs that Dad was on for a very long time, just to know what he needed for what, because if things weren't working, we needed to go to the doctor and get things changed or adjusted. I read all the side effects, and so I was looking at all the side effects here, and then I'm thinking about all of his symptoms right here. And I go back to the original sin, which is pain. And so I thought, what if we just took care, just now we found a way, we took care of that. Can we drop a lot of these medications? And that's what we did. And so that was our first risk. We decided to not take 9 prescription drugs on the first night that he ever smoked weed in his life. He had a bell by the side of his bed in case he ever needed anything. He could ring it and I could come and help him. And but we both went to sleep, and I didn't hear that bell all night. And I woke up the next morning, and I go in to check on him, and he is up in the kitchen washing dishes and making breakfast. And no walker, no cane, no wheelchair, no oxygen. Every day since. He started walking, he started biking, he was able to drive again. He hadn't driven in 6 years. Able to drive again so much that he was driving me to work and back and picking me up and all that. We had to get him his own car. So he was happy, pain-free, he was in great shape, and I had my dad back and he had his life back. And that was a risk well worth taking in hindsight. We really scored big on that, no doubt. Dad had found his kind of new lease on life, and so we were both super excited about that. I mean, walking, biking, hiking, driving, socializing, interacting, not getting lost. He was happy, but again, we were in a state where this was illegal, and he really needed to be able to take it with him. After about 4 hours or so, smoking wears off, and the pain is too much for him. So, rather than compartmentalize his life into 4-hour segments, he'd lose track of time and he'd get caught out. And when he'd walk in, he was just wearing the pain on his face. Face is red, bloodshot. He can just barely move. And he comes in and goes straight to his room and smokes. And when I see him 15 minutes later, he's fine. But, you know, my dad is a straight arrow, no vices really. And, he didn't like the fact that he was having to break the law. He didn't like that he was worried about what he would tell his doctors or nurses when they asked him, if he's on any medication or anything like that. Any blood work that he had done, he knew that it would come back that there's THC in it. And so how would he have those conversations? Because doctors aren't allowed to talk about it or promote it or recommend it or anything. At least they weren't at the time. Who knows now, right? But we took another big risk. We had an opportunity come up. We were kind of kicked out of the place that we were living in Nashville at the time because the owner wanted to move back in. So he said, if you can leave within 15 days, I'll forego your rent for that 15 days and I'll give you $1,500. What if we move to a state, now, what if we move to Oregon? Would you want to do that where it's legal? And he says, I may not get another chance. In other words, let's go for it. Now, I didn't have a job in Oregon waiting for me, but we packed up what we had and we hauled it across the country to Oregon. And I got a job within 10 days and it was making barely anything. And within 3 weeks, I got a different job. And then I got a promotion in that job and then another promotion. Anyway, Portland was a very good life. And we were there for 7 years. And I would say 6.5 of those were the best years of his retirement. My daughter moved in with us after a few years, and so it was me and my dad and my daughter, and those were incredible times for me. So, and you know, weed is completely legal in Oregon, and so my dad was a refugee of the war on drugs, and he landed in a friendly place. So we were very happy in Portland. Like I said, my daughter came and lived with us, and I gave her my room and just got a room divider and slept on a little cot behind the room divider in the living room because I didn't want to give up my lifestyle, right? Just to get an extra bedroom. I didn't care to have that. I was gone every weekend, going hiking and exploring. I had all sorts of camping equipment and a van, and life was good. And so Sophie would go with me on some of those. Dad would go with me on some of those. We'd go together. We went camping. It was a really good life. I was very comfortable. We were all very comfortable. You know, I was comfortable to a fault where I had stopped growing. I mentioned that I was smoking way too much by that time, and so I was in a rut. Now, my dad's health, I had noticed it started to decline in that last year we were in Portland. And around that time, I had started watching videos about people who had left the country and gone and lived in other countries and how cheap it was. And so, you know, I was approaching 50 at the time, and I didn't have hardly anything saved for retirement, so only Social Security. And so it just seemed like a daunting uphill task to get what I had always wanted, which was a home and, you know, a piece of land and enough money to get by and live on and live near my friends or family. So this piqued an interest in me, and I always wanted to come to Asia, Southeast Asia, Thailand. I watched a lot of videos on everywhere, Mexico and Central America and all that, and my dad would watch them with me. He got very enamored with the idea, and one day came in to the living room, and Sophie and I were sitting in the living room smoking a blunt, and he said, I'm going to move to Mexico. I'm like, yeah, sure you are. And he never backed off of it. He started packing a duffel bag just so that he would know what he could fit in there and acted like he was living out of it. He stuck with it, and 6 months later, he was gone. But when he announced that, Sophie and I were talking about whether we wanted to stay where we were at or go get another place. She had lived with us for 3 years, and her ultimate goal was to move to LA and expand upon her fledgling modeling career, which she had started in Portland. So after a few days, she came to me and she said, Dad, I think when GPR, that's short for Grandpa Red, which is my dad, they have a special relationship. She said, when he goes to Mexico, I think I'm going to go to LA. And so I said, okay, well, that's awesome. And then I thought, what am I going to do? I could stay in Portland. I could go to LA with my daughter. I had a great job in Portland, and I loved the area. But quickly, it just seemed like that's just nothing that I wanted to do. And so I decided that I would also quit my job and I would join my dad in Mexico. So we took him to the airport. He went to Mexico. My daughter, I drove her down to California to LA and got her set up. And then I went and saw my mom and sister in Bentonville and my friends in Tennessee. And then I joined my dad in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. You know, I never wanted to be in Mexico. That was never my goal. But I thought other places in Central America would be nice to go and visit. So I was exploring those places. But really, my heart said Thailand. And so I convinced my dad that we would go to Thailand. And as I was really shopping for tickets, you know, in those few days or weeks, my dad's health problems began to be something where I started saying, you know, before we do this, because it's the unknown, we really need to address some of his health issues. And we decided the best thing to do for him was to take him back to the United States. He still had Medicare and still had his private insurance. We had not dropped those, just in case. And we came across a few things in Mexico that would be costly to explore further. So what we decided to do was to send him to Arkansas, where my mom and sister live, and let him take care of his issues there. And we expected that to take a couple of months, but it took 5 months. I had decided to go on to Thailand ahead of him. So I went to Chiang Mai, Thailand, and set up shop, and I was as happy as could be. I thought I would live there for the rest of my life. My dad decided to, when he was done in Arkansas, he decided to go back to Mexico in a different city where he had met this lady friend of his, and so he was going to stay near her. So I'm in Chiang Mai, he's in Mexico. While I'm in Chiang Mai, I go on a border run to Dalat, Vietnam. It was hot and smoky in Chiang Mai as it gets for about 6 weeks out of the year. And so I decided to escape that and go to a place that I heard was more temperate. Well, I fell in love with the area, the people, and decided that that was going to be my home base, which it is, and that's where I'm at now, in Vietnam. Several months after that happened, my dad's health in Mexico continued to go south. He was losing a lot of weight, and he was having all sorts of digestive issues. And I'm thinking, man, this is the food. And so we decided at that point to get him to Chiang Mai, Thailand. So I met him at the airport in Bangkok, and we drove straight from the airport to the hotel, which was very close to a marijuana dispensary. So after 30 hours plus on planes, taxis, and buses, we decided to drop off his bags at the hotel and walk a block to the dispensary, and that's what we did. He loves Chiang Mai. It's a very accessible city as far as it's flat and level, easy to walk. He's in the Niman area, which if you're moving an elderly person, that's a place where they're going to look. It's going to look more familiar. There's coffee shops and cafes on every corner, 7-Eleven, places to shop, places to smoke, things like that, all within a very reasonable walking distance. You're just surrounded by a lot of stuff there. So we moved him there, and his health has continued to be in not a great position, and anything can go wrong anytime. But he has a couple of ladies there that he's met. That one of them is there, on most days, and so he can go out with them. They can help him navigate any confusion that he has. Thailand is really the place for him if things get worse and he needs an assisted living type of facility or a retirement village with doctors on site as needed, that will still take him out, allows him to leave and come back whenever he wants. So the freedom is there, but the care is there also. And from what I've seen, you can get into these places for $2,000 a month can get you into these places. And depending on the level of care that you ramp up, or if you want to ramp up a meal plan, you can go up from there. But kind of getting almost full service, you're looking probably around $3,500 a month, which is full disclosure is what my dad clears if there aren't any other bills, right? Credit cards or loans or anything, is what he clears after his Social Security and his pension, his teacher retirement. So for now, he's in a limbo stage. He still has his freedom, and he has the opportunity for others to help him too. So right now, it's a perfect scenario for him. We still have his Medicaid in the United States, but not his supplemental health insurance. We have a health insurance plan for him in Thailand. He pays $1,900 per year. He had to pay it all at once, but you can pay it in 3 segments now. So he is in as good a condition as you can be in for somebody who has declining health. But he is independent at 78, and this is a good 10 years longer than we ever expected him to live. So he would be here with me right now if weed was legal here in Vietnam. I can just go see him anytime and stay as long as I need to. One of the things is what to do about. I've got a girlfriend here, a life here, friends. So my life is in Vietnam. He's in Chiang Mai, Thailand. And so I go back and forth between the two. So Vietnam allows me to stay in the same place for 90 days at one time. Then I have to leave for a visa run. That's when I usually go to see my dad for 1 or 2 months. So 30 to 60 days in Thailand, back here for 90 days. 30 to 60 in Thailand, back here for 90 days. So that's kind of how I'm managing it for the time being. As things progress with my dad and he needs more and more help, if he wants to stay independent, then you can pay very little to have like what he has, a lady friend or two who's just there for companionship and helps him through his processes, brings him some food sometimes, goes out and walks with him, make sure he's doing good. And he has to pay very little for their services right now. And as things ramp up, it's going to be very doable for him to stay relatively independent. If you pay somebody $500 a month, they probably live on site in with him as a caretaker. So we're not there yet. He is still enjoying life. He has a membership at the gym, and so anyway, that's his health journey from death to rebirth to whatever is next. Right? There's an outside chance that we could end up having to go back to the States. But for now, he's living his best life that he can live with the budget that he has. And what else can you ask for from that perspective once you're retired? So if you go to the States, then for the same price, which is basically everything he's got, he would be in a nursing home with not the type of life or quality care that we want, in his golden years, right? So we're going to do everything we can to keep him in Thailand. My dad is a wonderful, wonderful man, and wishing him all the best as always, and I can't wait to see you again, Dad. In my videos where I talk about Thailand and Vietnam, you'll hear a lot about my dad, and if you need to know some other information, let me know, and I'll be sure to kind of include different topics in my discussions. So anyway, don't forget to like and subscribe, comment, share. If you've made it this far, wow, that's pretty great. This is the longest video I've done. So until next time, signing off. All right, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.